Oh, we got one more thing here. It's a eugenics type of story.
We should invite fewer people to be born.
But it's also got, I don't know, it's got like a Days of Noah feel to it. It's not exactly Days of Noah stuff, but certainly the mechanics, so to speak, of a Days of Noah type of situation. And it's a story from Glamour magazine. You know, I've been checking out them Glamour mags.
Yes, this is your beat, man.
It's my new beat.
Finally, you get to mix your passion with your work here.
Yes, glamoring myself up. Yeah. So anyway, the headline here is the chilling trailer for Netflix's Our Father documentary has been released. The viewers are not okay.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not okay. And here's what the article says. At first glance, the plot synopsis for Our Father reads like a particularly sadistic horror story. It centers around one man, Donald Klein, a disgraced fertility doctor who covertly inseminated female patients with his own sperm, fathering over 50 children in the process. The Our Father is not a fictional tale. It's the name of a highly anticipated investigative documentary which is due to land on Netflix later this year. Directed by Lucy Jordan, Our Father focuses on a small town in Indiana, retelling the stories of the children, its children is in quotes, fathered by Klein. The trailer, which you can watch below, has already shocked viewers, with many expressing their disgust that Klein was able to get away with it for so long. What is Our Father about? So, okay, the article says it here. In April 2019, The Atlantic reported on the news that Donald Klein, once a much-respected fertility doctor, had deceived multiple women by using his own sperm to artificially inseminate them. Our Father highlights the perspectives of several of Klein's biological children, tracing how at-home DNA testing enabled them to uncover the truth, as well as discover an ever-expanding roster of new half-siblings. So, I just want to stop there. I did watch the trailer. I debated whether to just show the trailer, on the show. I don't have it ready here, so, you guys can go check it out yourselves. But the one of the premises that I noticed right away was pro DNA testing. This is like great PR for DNA testing kits. Because it's like, oh, you just never know. You should do it. You should, it's kind of one of those, it's ubiquitous. Everybody does a DNA test. That's kind of the presupposition that launches, or at least is part of like the fabric of how this even came to be. It's just normalizing. Everyone gets DNA tested, and
right.
We might discover some things about ourselves that may be uncomfortable, but the truth needs to be seen. We need transparency with our genetics, So that's something to keep in mind there. Then it gets into some other stuff. It also, hang on one second.
Sounds like there's a musical going on back there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the daughter to turn down the volume. Hang on one second.
Okay. And
right.
part of the issue with the, you say, well, what's so bad about having basically an advertisement for DNA testing companies based on, some sort of horrible monster, some criminal monster? Well, it's part of it is the fact that these DNA companies collect, store, and sell your DNA information. Mm-hmm. The Chinese government being one of the biggest purchasers of not only these companies as a whole, which they then, maintain and receive and own their assets, being that information, but some of these companies just straight up bundle up your DNA information and sell it to whoever wants to pay for it.
Here's where it gets very interesting, and it starts to connect the dots in terms of why this documentary is coming out this year and all that kind of stuff. And it's got a kind of a quasi-political motivation, but there's a lot more to it. But continuing on with this article here. It's also expected to touch, and because the documentary is not out, it's also expected to touch on Klein's motivation for orchestrating such a blatant abuse of power. Abuse of power, very important. He is a man of science, access to technology and scientific instruments that others do not, and he abused that power and that position, with one sibling in the trailer suggesting, quote, it was some sick experiment for him, while another pointed out the siblings' shared traits, blonde hair and blue eyes, saying, quote, it's almost like this perfect Aryan clan. So turning this into some kind of Hitlerian eugenics,
Ubermensch.
yeah, which is kind of interesting, right? So, okay.
Yeah.
And so already the public is going to be, this is an older story, and if you're local to that area, you know about this already, but the rest of the world is going to be presented with a documentary on Netflix, which who knows if Netflix is even around. Well, it probably will be by the end of the year.
It's around. I don't know.
They did get smashed. They got smashed today in the stocks.
Fine.
They'll be fine. Buy the dip. Not financial advice. But right around election time, they're going to be rolling out this documentary, and there's going to be some associations I think that they're going to try to make. But there's okay, let me just keep going. There will also be an examination of the inadequate legal structures, which makes it hard for Klein to be properly prosecuted for his actions. In 2017, he pleaded guilty to 2 felony obstruction of justice charges after denying to investigators that he'd been using his own sperm to inseminate patients. He was never charged with rape, sexual abuse, or assault. As one person notes in the trailer, quote, "I don't deny that it was a sexual violation, but legally there's just no crime that touches this particular act," end quote. So, yeah, interesting. He's sort of protected by the technicalities, yes, because of his prominent position as a doctor. So, also in the trailer, a fox.
He's in the priesthood. He's in the scientific priesthood, Gonz.
Right. Okay. Also in the trailer, a Fox News anchor, important Fox News anchor, is heard describing Klein as a, quote, person in a position of power, adding that, quote, he's known in our community as a philanthropist. He's an elder of a church. And it shows, the documentary trailer shows him like baptizing someone when those lines are spoken, associating this idea that, he's got this facade of a community man, an elder of a church, and that automatically associates evangelical, Republican, whatever, religious people.
Right.
And they're, perhaps all people, elders of the church, are capable of such awful atrocities. They're not mentally well. We had the Catholic Church thing, and now we have just another church elder who's also a scientist.
It's funny. I mean, it's interesting that his position in scientism as a priest protects him from these crimes, where, there was, for a long time, it's not so much this way now, but a long time there was this narrative that, the leaders in churches were protected from, from being held accountable for awful, monstrous things they do. And it's not so much that way now, thankfully, I mean, as it should be. But his position in the Church of Scientism still sort of protecting him in a similar way. Like, there's just no law. There's just no law that we can use to prosecute him. What are you talking about? And so this kind of dual position that he holds, I don't know, kind of makes it, I mean, in sort of a secular way, in a secular society, it's like you expect the church deacon to commit horrible crimes, but you don't expect the scientist, to have any sort of moral or ethical shortcomings.
Right. The scientist only has that because he's also a religious man, and that ruins his judgment for science.
And there's an interesting juxtaposition between, again, just kind of the secular narrative of like, he's a deacon, well, he's obviously a monster,
right?
And not, he's a scientist, right. He's obviously morally upstanding. So there's that, you can feel that interesting tension within the trailer that they're using to really reel people in here. Yeah,
and certainly, so here's the thing, the takeaway from me is that this film, not directly, but for people like us who are sort of looking at it, paying attention to these topics, it does touch on the idea of transhumanism and eugenics, but also kind of a genetic surveillance society that we touched on earlier, abuse of technological and scientific authority, the facade of religion. But I think the big thing is, for the general public, this type of, this is real. Like, some guy in Indiana right now abused his position in science to basically knock up a bunch of people. He's got all these kids in like a 25-mile radius or something like that, right? So this is reality. This is the technocracy, the scientism creating this circumstance, this situation. Of course, there are more traditional ways of forcing one seed upon a population, I suppose, but doing it in this sort of laboratory manner is very unique to our time. And the public at large, it's diabolical, but the public at large will hear this and say, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. I can't believe this is real. And it's desensitizing them to probably start rolling out more and more facts, quote unquote, realities about our world today. And, this is why we do this show, because there's a context to everything, right? There's a long-standing narrative context, like a biblical cosmic context that helps explain, or at least, sort of make sense of the spirit behind something like this. And so that's why, we talk about the days of Noah. Jesus said the days of Noah. Well, I just played the jingle.
But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
And if we're talking about the days of Noah being genetic tampering in some form or fashion, and certainly Genesis 6 has a little more detail on the specifics of, who was involved. If we're talking just in the context of genetic tampering, we're there, man. We are in the days of Noah. If some dude can do something like this and basically be protected, maybe not anymore, like communally, after this documentary or the trailer in the documentary comes out. Like, if this guy probably has to move out of Indiana, right? If he wants to like live a decent, or not decent, but just like a life that's not, I don't know, bothered by the public or something like that. But who knows? Maybe this also is an opportunity to create more legislation around this kind of thing. More, I don't know, surveillance of these labs and stuff and these independent doctors. Because one thing the medical establishment would like to do, and as a result of COVID as well, is to centralize all of it more. They want to know who's doing all the experiment, or if there is, I don't know, surveilling the doctors themselves to make sure that they're not breaking any rules or, going outside the boundaries of the ethics of science or whatever it may be. So anyway.
Yeah, well, this certainly makes a good case for that.
Yeah.